Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take topics you're curious about and, well, we dive deep.
We try to pull out the most interesting bits.
And today we're focusing on a specific dinosaur, Aletopelta. It's from the Late Cretaceous, right here in what's now Southern California.
That's the one. We've gathered the scientific details, the discovery story, its features, all that stuff. And for you listening, if you want to get a good handle on this dinosaur without, wading through dense papers.
Yeah, we'll break it down.
all.
Exactly. We want to get to the heart of what makes Aletopelta such a significant find.
Okay, so let's start with the discovery because it's not your typical dig story. We're talking 1987, Carlsbad, California, construction site.
Right. Not paleontologists initially, but a construction crew. And Bradford Riney spotted something unusual.
Which turned out to be, well, pretty major.
Oh, yeah. The San Diego Natural History Museum got involved quickly, secured the specimen. They first called it the Carlsbad ankylosaur.
Catchy but temporary. Very temporary. And understanding it involved two main groups of researchers. First, Walter Coombs and Thomas Desmarais described it in '96. They did the initial work.
But no official name yet.
Not yet. That came in 2001. Tracy Ford and James Kirkland formally named it Aletopelta coombsi.
Aletopelta. The name itself is interesting. Wanderer Shield, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Pelta for shield, referring to the armor, obviously. We'll definitely get more to that.
And elites, the wanderer part.
That's a nod to plate tectonics, basically.
Uh,
The piece of land where it was found, the Peninsula Ranges terrain, has actually moved north significantly over millions of years. It sort of wandered up from near Mexico.
wow. Okay, so the name ties into geology, too. That's cool.
It really does. And coombsi, the species name, honors Walter Coombs, who did a lot of foundational work on armored dinosaurs.
And you can actually go see this specific fossil.
The holotype, SDNHM 33909, that's like the official reference specimen. It's on display at the San Diego Natural History Museum.
Good to know. So let's place it in time. When exactly was Aletopelta around?
We're looking at the late Cretaceous period, specifically the Upper Campanian stage. That puts it around 75.5 million years ago.
And the location found in the Point Loma Formation, which is marine rock, isn't it?
It is, and that's a key point. Finding a land-dwelling armored dinosaur in marine sediments tells the story.
How did it get there?
Well, the thinking is it likely died on land, maybe near a river. Its carcass probably got washed out to sea.
Okay.
And it seems it sank, ended up on the seabed, upside down, actually. And over time, its bones became a sort of mini reef.
A reef, like things grew on it.
Yeah, exactly. Oysters, Ostrea spondylus, those thorny oysters, they attached right onto the skeleton. Ammonites and gastropods were found nearby, too. It became an anchor for sea life.
So this Wanderer Shield ended its journey as an ocean habitat. But it wasn't left completely in peace, was it?
No, definitely not. There's clear evidence of scavenging. Sharks, yes. Things like Squalocorax and Scapinorhynchus. And probably marine invertebrates, too. We see the evidence in the bones. Some long bones are hollowed out, and there are these shallow pits, like bite marks, on the osteoderms, the armor plates, and the ribs.
Ouch. Okay, let's talk about the size in that armor. How big are we talking?
Initial estimates were around 6 meters, maybe 20 feet long, but Gregorius Paul later revised that down to about 5 meters, so maybe 16 or 17 feet. Still pretty hefty.
And the weight.
Estimated around 2 tons. That's what, 4,400 pounds? A solid tank-like animal.
And the skeleton itself, what parts do we actually have? You said it wasn't complete.
Right, it's fragmentary, but decent. We have teeth, bits of the shoulder blades, the scapulae, part of the humerus, ulna, possibly radius fragments from the arm.
Okay.
And then parts of the hip, the ischium, femora, the thigh bones, tibiae and fibulae, the lower leg bones. Also, 4 or 5 partial vertebrae, bits of the sacrum, fragmentary ribs, and crucially a lot of osteoderms.
The armor plates.
Yes, including parts that formed a shield over the pelvis and what's called a cervical half-ring armor around the neck.
Now, there was a suggestion this specific Aletopelta might not have been fully grown.
Yeah, that's an interesting possibility. Some elements, like the ankle bones, the astragalus, weren't fully fused to the tibia, and some scutes, some armor plates, seem only partly fused, plus some vertebral spines.
So maybe a teenager in dinosaur terms.
Sort of, yeah. Could be an immature individual, which means, some features might look a bit different in a full adult as a wrinkle.
Right. So based on what we do have, what did that armor look like? What were the key features Ford and Kirkland first noted?
They pointed out quite a few things. The teeth were wider than tall. The femur, the thigh bone, was much longer than the tibia and fibula. It had 3 metatarsals in the foot.
And the armor itself.
The pelvic shield over the hips was made of these polygonal, kind of low-peaked osteoderms. There was a large pointy spike, probably on the shoulder, and then really distinctively hollow osteoderms. Yeah, some were described as like hollow caps across the back. Others over the neck and shoulders were like hollow pup tents.
Pup tents, okay, I can picture that.
And the ones on the tail were triangular, flattened top to bottom, and asymmetrical. Overall, the initial take was that the armor was generally hollow and quite thin-walled.
Huh. Hollow armor seems counterintuitive. Maybe lighter.
That's the idea. It could potentially reduce weight, maybe allow for a bit more agility than you'd expect, but maybe it wasn't quite as strong against, say, a big predator's bite. It's speculation, really.
And like always in paleontology, ideas get refined, right? Later researchers looked at it again.
Absolutely. Victoria Arbour and Philip Curry, back in 2015, they reevaluated Aletopelta. They highlighted some other diagnostic features.
Like what?
They noted the pelvic osteoderms were specifically hexagonal and formed this almost continuous sheet, but without a sort of root-like dendritic texture some other armored dinosaurs have. And that neck armor, the cervical half ring. They found the osteoderms there were actually fused to a bony band underneath.
Ah, okay. So more specific details that help define it.
Exactly. Helped confirm it really was its own unique thing.
Which leads us to the big puzzle. Where does it fit in the family tree? Sounds like that's been debated a lot.
Oh, it really has. So back in '96, Desmarais and Coombs were cautious. They suggested maybe it's a nodosaurid?
Nodosaurids, that's one of the 2 main groups of armored dinosaurs. Those ones usually without tail clubs, right?
Correct. They saw some similarities to things like Edmontonia or Panoplosaurus.
But then Ford and Kirkland, when they named it in 2001, they argued it was an ankylosaurid, the group that does include the famous tail clubs, at least in later forms.
Yes, they felt its unique features put it in the ankylosaurid camp as a new genus and species within that family.
Okay, ankylosaurid it is. Or was.
Well, then in 2004, Vicarius and colleagues threw a wrench in the works. They suggested Aletopelta might be a nomen dubium.
A doubtful name. Meaning what?
Meaning, they felt it didn't have enough truly unique diagnostic characteristics to confidently classify it, or even be sure it was distinct. Not that it wasn't real, just that it was hard to define properly based on the evidence then.
Okay, so its status was uncertain for a while.
For a bit, yeah. But then Arbour and Curry's 2015 study, using those more specific features we talked about, basically validated it again. They said, no, it is a valid genus. And they also sank a proposed subgroup, Stegopeltinae, saying it wasn't a real evolutionary group.
Right, so where did they place Aletopelta?
Their analysis put it in what we call a polysemy. Imagine a family tree branch where several relatives split off from the same point, but you can't quite resolve the exact order.
Like a bush instead of clear branches.
Kind of, yeah. It was grouped with other early ankylosaurids like Leoningosaurus, Cedarpelta, Chuankalong, and then the branch leading to more derived later ankylosaurids.
So somewhere near the base of the ankylosaurid tree, but the exact connections are fuzzy.
Precisely. And other studies found similar things. Arbour and Evans in 2017, Rivera Silva and others in 2018, they also found Aletopelta in these unresolved basal polytomies, sometimes with even more dinosaurs like Hylaeosaurus or Gobisaurus in the mix.
It seems like a common theme. Figuring out those very early relationships is tough.
Very tough. Park and colleagues in 2019 had it in another polytomy with Giniumpelta, Nodosaurus, even Converosaurus from Australia. It's complex.
But wait, there was another twist recently.
Yeah.
Something completely different.
Uh-huh. Just to keep us on our toes, a 2022 study by Frauenfelder and colleagues proposed maybe Aletopelta isn't an ankylosaurid at all.
What? So back to Nodosaurid.
Potentially. They suggested it might actually be the basalmost nodosaur, the earliest diverging member of that entire family, which would be pretty significant.
Wow. So it's either an early, hard-to-place ankylosaurid or maybe the oldest known nodosaurid.
Right.
It's quite a range of possibilities.
It absolutely is. It really shows how science works, you know. New finds, new analyses, they can shift our understanding quite dramatically. That 2015 tree from Arbour and Curry is a good snapshot showing it with those other early ankylosaurids, but it's a hypothesis, always subject to revision.
Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this Wanderer Shield. We've got the surprise construction site discovery. It's decent size, that distinctive, maybe hollow armor.
Right, the pup 10 osteoderms.
Then this ongoing mystery about its exact spot in the family tree. Is it Team Ankylosauridae or Team Nodosauridae? and maybe even the founding member of the Nodosaurids.
That's the state of play. And that name, Aletopelta Wanderer Shield, it just fits so well, doesn't it?
It really does.
The shield is the obvious armor, but the Wanderer, it reflects the geology, the plate tectonics, but maybe also its slightly wandering status in our classifications right now.
It's a great example of how one fossil, found by chance, opens up so many questions about life millions of years ago, and how science keeps refining the picture.
Definitely. And it leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about. What does finding this land animal in marine rocks really tell us about coastal ecosystems back then? About how these dinosaurs lived and died near the sea?
Yeah, and what kind of evidence, maybe a more complete skeleton or new analytical methods, might finally pin down whether it's an ankylosaurid, a nodosaurid, or something else?
Exactly. It reminds us that even with amazing discoveries like Aletopelta, there's always more to learn, more pieces of the puzzle out there.